been chatting a bit here at Atlantic Station, and
rainy night in Atlanta.
Yes, rainy on the streets of Atlanta. We've been seeing a lot of movies lately.
Yeah, it's sort of film geek heaven. I think between the two of us, there are 7 screenings this week.
7 movies this week, but that doesn't even count. I mean, today I got 2 more screeners. These screeners, of course, are screening copies of movies, usually that we've already seen in the theater. For some reason, they want to remind us that, hey, Brad Pitt was in a movie called Moneyball a few months ago.
That's the way it works, and God bless him for doing it.
Absolutely. But we're getting a lot of movies, and one of the movies that we were treated to today is a movie that is very unusual in the marketplace because it lacks a certain measure of sound, that being dialogue. It's technically a silent picture. It's called The Artist, and I did run the trailer on the Film Fix some months back because I had heard about this film, and it's odd because it's avant-garde today, because silent pictures that, of course, were all in vogue back in the 20s have sort of seen their time come and go. But we saw The Artist today, and I can say I really liked The Artist.
I liked it very much too. I think it's going to, inevitably, it's going to end up on a lot of people's top 10 lists, and it's already been declared the best movie of the year by a couple of critics organizations. And it is interesting because really, if you've seen a lot of silent film, and just sort of part of my job teaching film history, I have seen a lot, it really wouldn't be that extraordinary if it had been released in 1925 or so, you know, generally speaking. But now, you know, you go back and you do a black and white silent film, and it's something that's sort of radical. That doesn't mean that it's any less joyful to watch.
Oh no, and it's absolutely a joy to watch. And it also, for film geeks like us, I of course have only worked in video, and I've never worked in film. And so I was asking Jeff afterwards, I'm like, hey, you know, what about this? You know, like, for example, the movie The Artist is in a very different aspect. It's not in widescreen. I guess it's in what we might consider 4:3 aspect ratio, which I don't know if that's the way they would say it in.
That's
like
exactly
the old
how they say, you know, 1 1/3 to 1 or 4:3. It's a third longer than it is tall, and yeah, that's exactly it. Until post World War II, when TV came around, all movies were in that aspect ratio, and then TVs were in that aspect ratio for decades until we got these widescreen TVs. And so it's in all manner of form, it's a complete throwback to something that's in the 1920s during the silent period, but then they use sound brilliantly, I think, in a couple of scenes. And so it's interesting. They are working in the sound era, and so every once in a while, when they want to use sound, they can, which is, of course, you know, takes it beyond something that would have come out during the silent period.
And it's not just music, which, of course, after seeing the movie, I asked Jeff, I said, well, maybe this could ironically get some kind of score nomination as well, because the music sets the tone, and in fact the music is everything at times to sort of set the tone as to what, you know, the mood is that is being evoked. And let's talk about the story of The Artist, because it's very telling. It is about George Valentine, who is a fictitious silent movie star who, you know,
sort of a cross between John Barrymore, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and Rudolph Valentino.
Rudolph Valentino, too. And so you have this dashing man who, of course, is played by an actor who we've seen in the OSS 117 movies, which in a way are sort of an homage to all of the spy movies. And of course it's a spoof, but it's very sophisticated and very well done. And
yeah, the actor is Jean Dujardin. And in a weird way, those movies are perfect preparation for this one, because those movies are very physical in themselves. The comedy is very slapstick, you know, lots of sight gags. And so here, he's still pantomiming. You know, it all depends on whether he can act the way they used to act during the silent period. And he does very, very well. Surprisingly well, I thought.
Well, and I asked Jeff, I was like, hey, Jeff, you know, we should do our review of The Artist as a silent picture, you know? And I was going to say, you know, we could maybe try this. And I realized, driving from that theater to Atlantic Station, where we have seen The Sitter and we've seen, I saw New Year's Eve, that would be very hard to do. And one of the things that they play around with in this movie, very serious, and it makes a very sophisticated point, is when the talkies came around, and I'm not going to spoil the reasons for him not wanting to be a talkie actor, but when talkies and when sound came into motion pictures, it left an entire generation of actors who had built their entire careers around one type of acting sort of out in the cold.
Yeah.
And it was a very physical, in the movie they talk about mugging for the camera, which of course is an insult to those actors of that generation, but it's a very physical type, and it is interesting too, because I've been saying, last week I talked about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which there's a lot of silence in that. Now you have seen that. There's a lot of emoting going on. Last week we reviewed Shame, and there's a lot of silence in that movie, and so there's sort of in a way it could be almost a silent picture in places. So now we've got a movie that truly takes the silent movie approach to telling a story and does it brilliantly with The Artist, and I can see this being nominated for just about everything.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing is, it's a French director. The stars, Jean Dujardin and Bernice Bejo, are both European, and yet this isn't going to be up for a foreign language category because there's no language.
Well, yeah, any language that you see, the title cards and so forth, are in English.
Yeah.
So it's and it's just it's a delightful film.
It really is, and we really didn't cover the story.
We didn't cover the story.
So,
I meant to talk about it, but you go ahead.
George is the big movie star during the silent period. He happens to meet this young lady who's trying to build a movie career for herself. They meet in 1927, which is the year when The Jazz Singer came out, and that wasn't technically the first sound feature ever released, but it's the one that changed everything. And so he suddenly becomes a relic of the past once we enter the sound era. Meanwhile, she's perfect for the sound period, and so she starts to build her own career, and their lives are sort of on two different paths. And so they're covering a lot of the same ground that Singing in the Rain did, and some other movies. Star is Born.
There's a lot of dancing in this movie.
Yeah, but it's a completely different treatment than anything else I've seen before. It's very moving, and you really feel for George and his predicament.
Totally. You're completely drawn in, and Penelope Ann Miller plays his wife, and she's very troubled by whatever is wrong in their relationship, and the movie smartly keeps that a bit ambiguous. I was surprised by how sophisticated the story was and how many years, because they cover a span of 1927 to about 1931. They really cover a large time period, and no one's talking. They're talking, but we're not hearing what they're saying.
Right.
They're emoting, but we're not hearing the words that sort of set them off. We're seeing what happens to them. And it's remarkable how much they're able to cover and how well the story plays out.
Yeah, I think in every way, in every aspect of form, it really is a throwback. And the fact is, I'm kind of a silent movie buff, and so it isn't surprising to me that you can tell an intricate, complex story. Watch Pandora's Box, the G.W. Pabst movie sometime. Watch anything by F.W. Murnau. These men were masters.
You were talking about The Last Laugh earlier.
The Last Laugh was brilliant,
And we were talking about The General,
Yeah, The General.
Hugo is
exactly.
The General.
So if this movie, sort of surprises some other people and makes them, kind of think about, okay, what exactly is a good film, then I would love it. Because the fact is, even today, a movie that comes out in 2011, if it doesn't work visually, then no amount of, brilliant dialogue is going to save it.
That's true.
It's a motion picture still.
And the other thing is that we are reviewing two other movies that are on the other end of the spectrum. The Sitter, which is a comedy, and then New Year's Eve, which I call the disaster movie of ensemble comedies. And it's just you have at the other end of the spectrum these cloying kind of they're just out there to make money, and then you have a movie like The Artist, which I don't know if it's going to make money. I certainly hope so.
I think it's already making more than anyone could have predicted, just because it's so good and it's getting so much buzz for the kind of movie it is. And the fact is, it's a very sophisticated movie without ever feeling sophisticated. You're not sitting there sort of intellectually dazzled. You're just really drawn into a really great story.
Yeah, it's not, there's not any heavy science. The world isn't about to explode like in Melancholia. They're not dealing with complex numeric crunching numbers like in Moneyball. They're just dealing with personalities. And Jeff said something that was really wonderful last week, and I edit the show, so I had to watch it over and over again. But he talked about how Shame leaves the camera on the actors, and it just lets the actors just be really good. And I thought that was really well put. And I've been thinking about that, and in watching the artist, the other thing the artist does is it doesn't have a lot of close-ups in the artist. There's a lot of medium and wide shots, and I think that is also the techniques that were used back then, but the actors still do their thing. They have to, because they can't say their thing. They have to do it. And we talked about whether they actually had dialogue or how the scripts were written back then.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing. It
No,
really
I think
is.
that's right. It's not until the mid-20s, late 20s that a lot of German filmmakers started using a lot of close-ups. And one of the few movies from the 20s to really be praised for its use of close-ups is a Carl Theodor Dreyer movie, The Passion of Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
Which I think either came out in 1927 or 1929. And so, yeah, you're right. For the most part, you get medium or full shots, the occasional close-up during this period. And so,
Yeah, and
like I said, they really mimic the form of the time extremely well.
So I'm going to give a very big, and I'm very, very high on the artist. I'm going to give it a big fix.
I give it a big fix too, and I don't know how widely it will play. And so if what we've said intrigues you at all, I urge you to call your theater. Remember, this still is a consumer-driven industry we're talking about here. And so if you call the theater and say you want to see it, they're more likely to get it, and it's more likely to play wide.
That's right.
And I would
demand
love it if it does.
Just like Paranormal Activity, demand the artist, and then make an event out of it, dinner and a movie. Understand you're really going to have a true, I don't want to call it an art house experience, but I guess that's essentially what it is.
It won't feel like an art house experience.
It won't feel like. It's very entertaining. It's a romantic comedy on one level, I think. And speaking of romantic comedies, I saw New Year's Eve. So let's take a look at a clip from the from the other end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
New Year's Eve.